absolute pleasure to be here. And my name is Noori, that's actually Arabic for my light, and Siddiqui, which means the trusted one. So I trust that you can trust me to share some light with you this evening. It's a great passion of mine to help people deal with emotional stress in their lives. And if you want to take the word emotional, it's actually energy in motion. Now, I haven't got a whiteboard or fancy slides or anything, but if you do want to take notes while I'm talking, you're more than welcome. I won't be offended. I'll be highly delighted. Because there are certain things that I may say to you that you just want to anchor and allow yourself to ponder on after this event. So, when we are talking about our energy in motion, we all know that we are energy. And so therefore we are a vibration. Now the teenagers get that because they're going in the vibe. Right. So if they're not in the vibe, they're not in flow. They're not connected. They're not communicating. So when we are not in flow and we are not in the vibration of that flow, then we are stuck and we are in resistance. Now you may all have heard of the word, what you resist, or the saying, what you resist will persist. Right. Now that can be used very flippantly, because what does it mean to resist and then persist if you don't know what it is that you're resisting? So in emotional stress, what you get to deal with is the emotions that you use every day that do not serve you. In fact, they create that resistance. And some people term them as your egotistical emotions. And they will go a step further to say that ego means to edge God out, because you want to be in control. So when you are in your ego, it means that you feel that you have to do everything, that you've got to be in control, you've got to be behind the steering wheel. It's very important for you to be right. If you need to be arrogant about it, it's perfectly okay. And you will be full of self-importance. Now, how does it serve you to be in any of that? Well, it keeps you at the wrong vibration. It keeps you at a negative vibration that doesn't serve you, that actually creates resistance in your life, and it causes blockages. Because with those negative emotions will come other things like blame and shame and guilt, where you want to be proving yourself for some reason. You might have an I'll show you attitude. You might have a, well, I'm not good enough, but nobody must see that. You may be coming from a total sense of insecurity, and in that insecurity you play out your fears, not your flow. So your fears are your false expectations appearing to be real. Anybody heard of that before? Yes. Good. Often when I say that, people have never heard of it. It's very refreshing. Now I get an idea of who I'm sitting with and standing with. So when you are in your false expectations appearing to be real, it means that you have a very vivid imagination. Well, congratulations. Right. The question is, does it serve you? Now, Einstein said that imagination is more powerful than knowledge. And that in fact, we are not here to be responsible for ourselves, and this is very, very big what I'm telling you. We are not here to be responsible for ourselves. We are here to be responsible for what we focus on. And then we are also responsible for the feeling that we apply to our focus. So is our feeling in a vibration of success and flow and ease, or is our feeling in a space of insecurity and fear where we have to prove something, or we just hope that it works? So where is it that you actually are? Einstein also said that we are limited by the boundary conditioning of our own thinking. We are limited by the boundary conditioning of our own thinking. So therefore, who is our enemy? Ourselves. Right. And how would we describe ourselves in that context? Is our mind. So in essence, it's mind over matter, and if you don't mind, it won't matter. But if it matters, well, you'll need help, won't you? Because you may be going through life like the mouse on the wheel, but eventually when you have to jump off, you'll wonder what happened. So are you wondering what's happening now? Have you been wondering what's been happening? And are you wondering what's going to happen because you're really not sure what's going on? You're just hoping that as you go through life day to day, that somehow it's going to work out. Now, if you're in that level of confusion or self-doubt, it means that your feeling focus is not actually in a feeling focus. It's in a fear focus. And if you are responsible for what you focus on, then what you fear will become your reality. So whatever it is you focus on, you are making real. Now, when you step into these dimensions of understanding, you go into the realms of self-development. And in the realms of self-development, you go into things like self-realization, that actually means getting real with yourself, and you go into self-revelation, where you reveal to yourself the truth of what's actually going on. I have been through some very interesting challenges in my life, and around the age of 37, I found myself with a cancerous tumour appending to my womb that grew to the size of a newborn baby. I went on to realise that it was caused by emotional stress. And that then caused me to embark on a journey of self-healing, where that cancerous tumour was being removed, but after 3 years of going to oncology, I didn't have one radiation or one chemotherapy treatment. So I went on my own self-healing journey, and have gone on to be a wellness expert as a result of that journey, as well as regularly appearing in radio and television, either as a presenter or as a guest. Because I realized that if I could be well, and I could understand this dynamic of emotional stress, that was a very powerful message that I felt compelled to share with others. So this comes back to our energy in motion, because behind that energy in motion is your passion, is your drive, is your mission, is your vision. So when you are with your energy in motion, in that vibrational energy of what drives you, what inspires you, what is it to be inspired? Well, my connotation of it is to be in spirit. So as an inspirational speaker, I am here to inspire you to get in the flow of your spirit, because the soul is awaiting direction from the spirit, and if the spirit doesn't know where it's going, then the soul will be lost. So how many lost souls do you know? If we wake up every morning and we don't know where we're going, that's very stressful. If I decided now to get on a taxi to go to Durban, but I got on the taxi and I said, but I don't want to go to Durban, you'd say, well, get off then. So if you're waking up every morning and you're not quite sure where you're going, then where are you going? So you might appear to be doing, and you may appear to be having, but if you're not being present with what it is that you really want, and you're not focused on it in a way that serves you, then you're getting a lot of what you don't actually want. So this shows up really well in our relationships, because the only relationship we really have is what? The one with ourselves, right? But we don't, do we? We're not having relationships with ourselves. I learnt, having gone through a divorce when I was about 44, I chose to be single for about 6 years before remarrying, because I decided until I really learned to have a relationship with myself, I wasn't qualified to be in a relationship with anybody else. And in that, it meant that I could always choose to be happy, so I wasn't looking for somebody to make me happy, or even for me to look for them for security or anything else. That all of that must be coming from me first. Now what I did was I set a vibration for myself of loving myself, liking myself, asking myself, am I somebody that I'd like to be married to? You know, people come to me for divorce therapy and for marriage therapy and for therapy with teenage children. But if they come to me and say, you know, Noori, can you help me? My marriage is falling apart and I just really don't know what to do. Can you help me? I just want to be happily married. So I say to them, first of all, well, are you somebody that you'd like to be married to? 90% go, uh-oh. And then the next question I'll ask is, are you scared of being divorced? And 90% will say yes. So I'll say, well, if you're scared of being divorced, you're not qualified to be married. You're just scared of being divorced. Your feeling focus is on divorce. It's not on being married. So how are you going to be happily married if your fear is divorce? And if your fear is divorce, you probably will be divorced. Because your fear will manifest because that's what you focused on. Right? So if you ask people who have been divorced, they will be able to tell you, when I got married to the father of my children when I was 30 years old in 1991, as he put the ring on my finger, a little voice in my head said, this man's going to divorce you. I'm thinking, where did that come from? 13 years later, this man did divorce me. So that subconscious thought that got planted at the time when I was actually getting married actually made itself a reality. But the irony was that I was terrified of being divorced, and I was terrified of being a single mother. And I stayed in this relationship being verbally, physically, financially and emotionally abused, actually so that I could be qualified to do this work, so I've come to realise. Because there's no better teacher than experience, and all the other books and studies complement it. And at the end of it, I was strangled and almost murdered. But guess what? I was still waiting for him to say sorry. But he got such a shock of what he'd done, and he was so ashamed of himself that he didn't know how to face the people in our circle, the extended family, that would then come to know, because I had strangulation marks all down and my children had run into the room, and he took his hands off my neck because they ran in. So my children actually saved my life. And so he made up a lie and said, no, I've realised that I can't be married to Noori, and she's a terrible liar, and I want a divorce. And so he divorced me. And then I realised afterwards that actually the universe divorced me. Because this man nearly murdered me, and I was still waiting for him to say sorry. So I was being given a message that you're not meant to be in this marriage because you've got work to do, so you better get on with it, girl, because you're not supposed to be dead yet. Right. But my emotional stress that I experienced in that marriage was that I was so focused on my fears that I couldn't take ownership of my life. I couldn't stand in my power and say, it's okay for me to be divorced. It's okay for me to be a single mother. I am capable, I am intelligent, I will make a plan, and I will survive. I couldn't do that because my focus was that I was terrified of being divorced. So ultimately I got what I focused on anyway. So we've got to be very careful what we think, because what we are focusing on will become our reality. Now today, this plays itself out very seriously with our finances. So we run around after money, and in fact, stress in itself is actually your fight and flight. So go back to caveman, and what you will see there is that caveman gets up to go and catch supper in the hope that what he's trying to catch doesn't catch him. So he's fighting for supper, but he's flighting from whatever might want to catch him. Is that right? So that's kind of where you can imagine that stress might have first been experienced in the human body. But today, it's predominantly money, relationships, and such things, but perhaps predominantly money. So we wake up in the morning to run after the money, for the money to then run after us, and it's called the bills. And this causes us tremendous stress. And we keep on doing this, and it keeps us in a cycle of experiencing 7/24 stress until we decide to take ownership of that money, and perhaps we invest it, perhaps we get a return on investment, and we start to create an income where we don't always have to be selling our time for money or waiting for a paycheck, because as long as we keep doing that, we are going to be experiencing financial stress. We're either worried about the business not going well, or the job not going well, or the boss firing us, or something to that effect. So in our natural state, we are abundant. The trees, I always look at the trees and I think to myself, but you don't wake up in the morning wondering if the sun's going to shine, or where your food is coming from today, but you flourish and you grow and you blossom and you produce fruits. But as humans, we just haven't got it. We just believe in struggle. So imagine now that we're all going on an outing together, and we go down to the Orange River, and we're all going to go whitewater rafting. And we get to the river's edge, and all of us are really excited. And I said, hold on a minute. We're all going upstream. I say, Noori, are you mad? What is wrong with you? The flow is that way. That's the way the water's moving. That's the way that the raft is going to flow. And I said, no, but you wake up every morning like the mad salmon swimming upstream to lay its eggs and then die because you believe that life is a struggle. So let's try going upstream until you get what it is to be in flow. So how many of you are the mad salmon? Or how many people do you know are mad salmons? Because many of us grew up with a belief system that life is a struggle for one reason or the other. We get married and we get told, no, life is a compromise. Do you know that if you compromise in life, you give up the journey of your soul? You're giving up your destiny, your divinity of the flow that you are meant to be in. So relationships are about understanding and respect and trust and communication, but they're not meant to be about compromise. So I always say to people, you know, Mills and Boon should have been shot. I don't know where they are now. Because they really told us a lie about relationships, didn't they? We all married into the idea of it. So the reality, what's the reality of a relationship? It's actually about two people coming together to have a growth experience. Isn't it? And in that relationship, you get to have a bigger and better relationship with yourself, so there's more of you to have a relationship with the other person. Now, in my view, the father of my children, and I say that respectfully, not my ex-husband, because he's the father of my children, I respect him for that. And then I'm sending him a good vibration and a good energy, so he can continue to be a good father to my children. You see, your words are very important. So I'm not describing him as a bad person, and I don't give him that energy or send him that energy. So in that, I will say to you that he was one of my best teachers. So as you play your life out, all of you will have had somebody in your life that gave you huge adversity. Somewhere or the other. Could have been a parent, could have been a teacher, could have been a sibling, could have been an employer, somewhere along the line. Now, has that person been a teacher in your life, or have you allowed that experience to sabotage you, your healthy relationships, your financial success, or any other area of your life, that you've allowed that to affect you? So when we live in our negative emotions, we experience something called affectedness. So let's say, for example, that one of your parents, when you were 5, used to, around that age, as you can remember, used to frequently say that you were stupid and not so clever, or you could never do anything properly. And now you're 25, and maybe you're in a workplace or somewhere, and somebody says, how could you be so stupid to do that? And you will react, and you will be affected. That person called me stupid. But you haven't reacted to that event, you've reacted to what happened when you were 5. So what you are doing when you react is you are reenacting. And then when you reenact, you are playing out in your present a past event that you haven't cleared, that doesn't serve you. So what you've done is you've played out your insecurities and your fears that then sabotage you ultimately from creating success in your life. So I mentioned at the beginning that we talked about resistance, we talked about fears, we talked about insecurities. So how does this show up? I'll tell you a story of 2 brothers that were twins. One decided to be an alcoholic and live in the street, and the other one went on to be a successful surgeon and serve his community. So somebody went to both of them and asked the alcoholic, so why are you an alcoholic in the street? And he says, because my father was an alcoholic. So they went to the twin brother and said, why are you a successful surgeon, you serve your community? He said, because my father was an alcoholic and his story had nothing to do with me, other than to teach me what not to be. So in life we have his story and we have her story, but it's all history, isn't it? But how do we hold on to those stories? Because it's those stories that keep us trapped in our negative emotions. So let's say, for example, that imagine now that you're in matric, you're about to write your finals, and your mother dies and your father cries, and you miss going to university by 1 point. You needed 42 points and you got 41. And you get rejected from university. And you go to the university, you say, but my mother died and my father cried and I was writing my exams. I was just 1 point. Can I please go to university? And the university will say, but you are 1 point short. They are not interested in your story. Because in life, there are no excuses. And when you make excuses, there will be consequences. Some of us have been brought up to believe that we get punished. We don't really get punished. We just get consequences. So if I go and rob a bank and end up in prison, well, that's my consequences. If I act out my insecurities and my fears all my life, and my fears keep on happening, well, it's my consequences for focusing on them. So where are you in your story? It's a very interesting subject. Let's say, for example, that I made a movie out of each one of your life stories. And then each one of us sat and watched everybody else's movie. And at the end, we all had to do a review. Do you know, let's say, for example, we're doing my story, and then you do a review of my story, watch the whole movie, and as I go around the room, each one of you will give me a different review about my story. And it will probably not have much to do with the story that I told in the first place. Right? So if you play your life back on the story that you remember, and then you go back to your mother and father and you relay your version of the story to them, they'll say, but that's not what happened. But it didn't really happen like that. No, but you didn't realize that because this and that happened, that's why that happened. And there's a story behind the story. Right. And then maybe it's even after your mother and father has passed away that you get to realize all other kind of stories that you didn't understand. And now you do, because the aunties and the uncles and the cousins have all come to tell you their stories that are to do with your story that's now all mixed up. And you've been playing out your life based on your story. So in other words, what is your perspective in your life that does not serve you? Where is your blame, shame and guilt that you're holding on to? My mother didn't love me like my sister. My father wasn't there for me, he was always working. My father was an alcoholic. My parents got divorced when I was 13. Well, that was just to see who you became in your story. You see, it isn't what happened, it's who do you become with what happened, and then what are you going to do with what happened? So I was one of the first born mixed race babies to be born in the UK, 1959. So I'm 55 this year. And I moved to South Africa when I was 30. And at the age of 44 got divorced and became homeless and broke after I got divorced. So my children had to go and live with their father. I said, keep them for 3 months and I will come back for them. And he applied for custody and said I abandoned them, and he won. So I lost custody of my children. I went on a 5-year journey to then, which included me going back and living in England for 4 years to make money to come back for them. And I discovered through a university lecturer on law that in South Africa children can apply for custody of their parents. And so I discovered from my daughters that they wanted custody of their mother. So I said, would you go to court and say that you want custody of mummy? They said yes. And so my 2 daughters set a precedent in the High Court of South Africa in Cape Town because they won back custody of their mother.
Wow, well done. Wow.
Thank
How
you.
old were
Yeah.
they? Congratulations.
They were, thank you. They were 11 and 14 at the time.
Wow, that's remarkable.
So there's no age factor there.
It's after the age of 8.
Okay, wow, I didn't know.
Thank you for that.
And so this was an amazing feat, mostly for my daughters. But what I learned along the way was the importance of having a relationship with me so that I could overcome the obstacles as they occurred and never lose faith and trust and never lose sight of my desired outcome, and to keep absolutely focused on what my desire was, no matter what. And this was over a 5-year journey. And in that journey I did things like, because I was living in England, and I went on a massive self-development journey. I was even speaking once a week to 100 people at a self-development meeting that was held once a week there. And I was with the, I went on Anthony Robbins twice. I've walked on hot coals. I put that in my biography. I've done potholing in New Zealand. I went out to listen to Les Brown in America. I've interviewed Demartini a number of times on radio. I've interviewed Patrick Holford a number of times on radio. But this desire, this quest for knowledge, for healing, for the desire to be more, and then to be able to plant that as seeds in my children. Because all the flowers of tomorrow are in the seeds of today. So if your seeds are contaminated, you're going to pass that on. So that's when we become toxic parents. So we don't want to be that. So we want to detox ourselves so that we can be happy, we can be well, and that's a vibration that we then not only send to our family, but it can vibrate into our community and a bigger community at that. So what is it that inspires you? What is it that keeps you connected to spirit, that would allow you to wake up every morning wanting to be more, wanting to make a difference, first to yourself? One of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself is to forgive you. We are all taught that our Creator is all forgiving, but we forget that until we forgive ourselves, that forgiveness can't reach us, because we don't allow ourselves to receive it. So when you allow forgiveness, you release blame, shame and guilt. Now all of us at some level carry shame for something that we're not prepared to forgive ourselves for. And we call it embarrassment, we call it humiliation, but it all amounts to that. So I said, tell me your life story. So she said, well, I went on to be 18 years old and then I got a job, and my boss had just recently got married about a year prior. He was happily married, but I ended up being his mistress. And then I went on to be, now it's a Muslim lady as well, so I mean that's like makes it even worse because of their culture and everything. And so I said, well, how long did that last? She said, no, 10 years, and then I got pregnant. So I said, well, then what happened? He said, well, the wife got to know, and then she came to scream at me, and then because we could have polygamous marriages, we ended up getting married because now there was a child, so I became the second wife. So my husband went back to live with his mother, and then he visited the first wife and visited the second wife, but all of us just really lived in chaos and drama. And I said, and what happened to the mother? I said, no, she said to me, till today she's still bitter and angry, and she lives with me, and she scolds me, and she treats me like I'm a filthy woman every day. So I said, oh, so how did it serve you to brush all of that under the carpet then? So the moral of the story that I'm showing you here is where somebody takes on shame that doesn't belong to them. Right? So in her case, she didn't ask for the molestation, she didn't act in the molestation, she was violated, somebody else was the abuser, but yet as that little girl, she took on the shame of being molested and feeling dirty and undesirable, and as a result, she went on to be a mistress and live a life where she felt undeserving of true love and happiness, and she played it out. Right? So when you don't deal with shame, it is going to manifest in all kinds of other ways. Another lady came to me, she said, oh, I've just got divorced for the 3rd time, I don't know what's going on, it's the 3rd abusive relationship, it's the same old drama all over again. I said, oh, you mean you just got married to the same person 3 times? She said, no. I said, really? She went, oh, Hottest, I know what you're talking about. So because she had baggage from before she ever got married the 1st time, that carried shame within her, she attracted a relationship that caused her to experience domestic violence that she was already committing to herself. Does that all make sense? So I'm also telling you my story, aren't I? So I had to go on this journey for myself to ask, where was my shame, where was my blame, where was my guilt, before I decided to then embark on another relationship that could then serve me and serve my happiness and serve my passion and allow me to live an inspired, happy life. So emotional stress is something that if you don't deal with, if you don't manage your emotional stress, it will manage you. And emotional stress is 70% of all diseases today. Because diseases are a dis-ease. And then your dis-ease will become a disease. So when you are over-releasing cortisol from your adrenals, you make the body acidic. And we are over 70% water, so like the swimming pool, when the pH is not 7.4 anymore, we start to create a stagnant pool inside us that becomes the breeding ground of disease. So we manifest in different ways with that. Stress itself is your #1 cause of death. And what we are doing today is we are living in stress and strain and tension. We are not living in ease and flow where we can aspire to living fulfilled and satisfied and joyful lives. So the question here is, are you able to choose to be happy? Yes. Do you choose to be happy? Well, that's up to you. So we all come here with our free will, and then we get to choose our emotional state. We get to choose it. So if, for example, somebody is confronting you, they will be behaving badly, but you will choose your experience. So let's say somebody comes and insults you, and you say, well, that sounds like some positive criticism, thank you. Or, who the hell do you think you are talking to me like that? So one will be your affected state, which is when you're upset, and the other one will be your response, because you are choosing your experience. Now, when you don't choose your experience, you then blame the other person for their bad behavior, and you say, he did this, and she said that, and that, and that, and that, and that. And this is why so many millions of rands are being spent in the workplace at the moment on conflict resolution, because nobody wants to take responsibility. But responsibility is your response ability. So if you're unable to respond in a way that serves you, then what will happen is that you will start attracting situations and things that give you more of what you don't want. I'm sure you all remember when you were at school and there would be one child in this class that gets bullied, and there'll be another child in the class that's the bullier or the bully. Why is it that one child gets bullied and that one child is the bully? It's a very interesting phenomenon, isn't it? So there's an energy about the child that's being bullied where there's a victim consciousness and there's a fear and there's an insecurity that attracts the energy of the bully to come and pick on that particular child. So this is an illustration of how we look like individuals, but actually we're just energy. And that what we are doing is we are attracting all of the time situations and things that either do or do not serve us. It could be that you are the bully in your life because you're not being very kind to you. So when you allow yourself to say, it's okay, I made a mistake, I forgive myself. I can choose to be loving and kind to me. If other people are being unkind, that's their problem. I'm not going to make it my problem. So you stop taking things personally, because there was something that you mentioned in your talk about how we can't afford to take things personally. Yes, so we simply can't afford it because it will cost us everything. Because what we do is we self-sabotage and we cause ourselves to push away what it is that we really, really want. So you are a magnet. If I rub my hands together now, I create energy between it. I can feel that energy, right? And that energy is attracting, and it's allowing itself to be a positive force. So if your energy that you're carrying is a negative force, then that is because of the vibration you are holding within you that is causing you to experience more of what you don't want. So what are the solutions? The solutions are to always come back to love. So when I feel upset, when somebody makes me angry, or I allow myself to become angry, I tell myself, love, joy, happiness is my choice. And they might be going, blah, 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 and I'll be going, love, joy, happiness is my choice. And I'll be sitting there, listening, paying attention, with a half smile on my face, as if they're entertaining me. Because I'm not going to take it personally, because it will cost me too much. So I wish you all love, joy and happiness. Thank you very much.